While the towering spruce at Rockefeller Center and the ubiquity of decorated evergreens suggest a timeless legacy, the American Christmas as we know it is a relatively modern invention. The holiday is a complex tapestry woven from ancient pagan rituals, religious doctrine, and 19th-century cultural reinvention. What began as a raucous winter solstice festival has only recently evolved into the domestic, child-centric celebration recognized today. The pagan roots, light in the darkness. Long before the advent of Christianity, early Europeans celebrated light and birth during the darkest days of winter. In the Nordic regions, the festival of Yule coincided with the winter solstice around December 21st. The burning of the Yule log was a symbolic act intended to warm the home and look forward to the return of the sun, while evergreens were brought indoors as a symbol of life persisting through the frozen winter. Simultaneously, in Rome, the midwinter festivals were elaborate and hedonistic. Saturnalia, a month-long celebration honoring the god Saturn, was characterized by the inversion of the social order, masters served slaves, and civil norms were suspended in favor of revelry. Following this was the worship of Mithra, the god of the unconquerable sun, whose birthday was celebrated by influential Roman sects on December 25. The Christian synthesis. In the early centuries of Christianity, the resurrection, Easter, was the focal point of the faith, not the nativity. However, by the 4th century, church leaders sought to establish a date for the birth of Jesus. Although biblical clues, such as shepherds watching flocks in the fields, suggested a spring birth, the church strategically aligned the feast of the Nativity with December 25. This decision allowed the church to co-opt existing pagan traditions rather than fight a losing battle to outlaw them. The birthday of the sun became the birthday of the Son of God. Consequently, pagan symbols were Christianized, the evergreen was decorated with apples to represent the Garden of Eden, and holly was reinterpreted to symbolize the crown of thorns. The War on Christmas, from carnival to contraband. By the Middle Ages, Christmas had replaced pagan rites in name, yet the celebrations remained rowdy, public, and often debauched. It was less a religious observance and more a carnival, presided over by a lord of misrule, where the peasantry demanded food and drink from the wealthy, a dynamic that often bordered on menacing. This disorderly conduct drew the ire of religious reformers. Following the English Civil War in the 17th century, Oliver Cromwell and the Puritan government vowed to cleanse England of decadence. In 1652, Parliament outlawed Christmas, viewing it as a popish survival with no biblical basis. This anti-Christmas sentiment crossed the Atlantic to the American colonies. In 1659, the Puritans of Boston enacted laws fining anyone caught celebrating the holiday. While other colonies, such as Jamestown, observed the day with feasting, the holiday fell out of favor in the United States following the Revolutionary War due to its English associations. In fact, Congress remained in session on December 25 for much of the nation's early history. The 19th century reinvention. The turning point for the holiday occurred in the early 19th century. As the Industrial Revolution spurred urbanization, class divides in cities like New York turned the traditional Christmastime revelry into dangerous gang riots. The city's upper class realized the holiday needed to be tamed. Intellectuals and writers spearheaded this cultural shift, moving Christmas from the streets into the American living room. Washington Irving softened the holiday's image in Bracebridge Hall, 1819, depicting a nostalgic, harmonious English manner where classes mingled peacefully. Charles Dickens cemented the modern ideology of the holiday with A Christmas Carol, 1843. The redemption of Ebenezer Scrooge taught the Victorian middle class that Christmas was a time for charity, family, and social reconciliation. Simultaneously, the royal family popularized the aesthetic of the holiday. When Queen Victoria's German husband, Prince Albert, erected a Christmas tree at Windsor Castle in the 1840s, the custom spread rapidly through England and America.
The evolution of Santa Claus. The personification of Christmas underwent a similar transformation. The figure originated as Saint Nicholas, a 4th-century bishop known for his generosity. Dutch settlers brought the tradition of Sinterklaas to America, but it was the Episcopal minister Clement Clarke Moore who revolutionized the character. In his 1822 poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, commonly known as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," More stripped the figure of religious vestments and reimagined him as a jolly, magical elf driven by reindeer. Later, during the Civil War era, political cartoonist Thomas Nast gave Santa his iconic rotund look, depicting him as a prosperous, grandfatherly figure. By the 20th century, Santa Claus had become a central figure of commerce. The mythology continued to expand with commercial intent. In 1939, a copywriter for Montgomery Ward named Robert May created Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer as a promotional tool, finalizing the lore that places children at the center of the holiday narrative. Conclusion: a modern amalgam. Today, Christmas is a synthesis of the sacred and the secular. It is a holiday that balances the religious observation of the Nativity with rituals of consumption, decoration, and entertainment. While critics often bemoan the commercialization of the season, history shows that Christmas has never been a static event. It has survived and thrived by constantly reinventing itself, shifting from a pagan solstice festival to a rowdy public carnival, and finally, to the nostalgic, domestic celebration of family and goodwill recognized around the world.